another really exciting guest. Put your hands together for Bradford Jordan, everybody!
How are you guys doing? Okay. I'm 9 years old. I'm in my parents' bedroom, and I'm pointing my mother's dildo at my babysitter. At 9, it was really rare for me to have a babysitter. I didn't have a regular babysitter. My dad was a doctor and he worked a lot, so he wasn't home very much, especially sort of in the evenings. He'd do late rotations, so I spent a lot of time with my mom. I was a mama's boy, and we'd sit in the living room and we'd do crossword puzzles, or she would quiz me on vocabulary words, which is true. And we had this like really nice relationship, and so it was odd for me when one night my parents told me that they were going out for the night and that I was going to have a babysitter. And that evening, my dad was dressed in a tuxedo. He had a white silk scarf, the whole thing, and my mom looked awesome, and they were going out. But I was terrified because I didn't like strangers, and they introduced me to this woman whose name was Becky. And Becky was about 18 years old. She was pretty, but sort of in the way, I don't know, like, you know how like, sometimes you go to a kid's playroom and you see a Barbie that's been like, fucked up. Like that Barbie has like been overloved and like its hair had been combed until some of it was falling out, and like the makeup has holes in it. That's how Becky was to me. And so she was pretty, but like I didn't trust her. And my mom and dad were like, okay, we're going out. They were clearly very excited about it. And they said, Brad, be nice, and Becky and Brad have a good time. And they left. And so it was me and Becky. Well, not completely me and Becky, because right about that moment, my dog, Benji, who was 13 years old dog, kind of ambled up and looked at Becky. And just kind of sized her up. And Becky did not like Benji at all. And on this point, I kind of have to, give Becky, let's be fair to Becky. Benji was 13. He had, his bottom teeth were rotting, so they like stuck out from his bottom jaw. So like, he had like hippopotamus face. And his back was bent, so when he walked, he sort of sashayed like an old bayou hooker, and he had all these lumps under his skin, so when you pet him, you were like, oh, God. But he was my dog, and I loved him. And Becky took one look at Benji, and she said, lock him up in the guest room. I don't want to see him. Your dog freaks me out. And yeah, rude, and like, that's not how you endear yourself to a 9-year-old at all. So I was like, I do not like Becky, her looks or her manner, but I will comply. And I took Benji, and if any of you have a pet, like you know what it's like to close a door on an animal that you love, right?
Never forget.
Yes. I'm not sure what you said, but I felt it. So I closed this door on my beloved animal, and I ate Domino's with Becky. And it's getting close to bedtime, and the pajamas that I wore were very specific to my family. So we all wore the same pajamas. My dad, because my dad worked in a hospital and he would work in a lot of surgeries, he would come home with surgery scrubs. And they were all like in him and my mom's dresser drawers. And so I was getting ready for bed. My parents weren't there. My dog was locked up. So I thought, at least I'll put on some of these surgery scrubs. I'll feel close to my parents. So I went into their room, and I opened my mom and dad's dresser drawer, and I'm rooting around for some scrubs, and my hand comes across this thing. And I take it out of the drawer, and it is the biggest penis I've ever seen. It's rubbery, it's flesh-colored, it's hollow, and I don't know why, to this day. But it was like really floppy, and it was fucking huge. So I'm just holding this like massive cock in my hands, and Becky comes in, and I'm like, Becky, what is this? And Becky goes, that is a dildo. And I didn't know what a dildo was, but Becky, that is your third strike. I don't like how you said that. You said that like you're judging my parents. You said that like there's something wrong with what's in our pajama drawer. And I said, and I like brandished it like a fencer. And I said, Becky, what is a dildo? And she said, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. And so I dropped the dildo and I marched to my bedroom. Because if my mother has taught me one thing, it's that vocabulary is important. So I get my monogrammed dictionary, I open it up and I go to the word dildo. I don't, dictionaries don't do a good job of really capturing what a dildo is. Especially for a 9-year-old. So I didn't quite get it, but I was certain at this point, totally certain that Becky was being rude. And so, I had locked away my favorite dog, my only dog, and I had played with a dildo. And it was time for me to take back the night. Yeah. Thank you. You're my guy. As a 9-year-old, you don't have a lot of power. You don't have a lot of status. So I went to the one thing that I knew gave me strength. I opened up my closet door, and I took out my Cub Scout uniform. And on my Cub Scout uniform were a few things, right? The starched neckerchief, the Weeblos badges, the wolf, brave, resolute, and clipped to the belt my pocket knife. Now this was not a good decision that I made. But I took out my pocket knife and I opened it to the blade. And I said to myself, I so vividly remember just saying out loud to myself, a man's gotta do what he wants. And I marched to my parents' bedroom, across the green shag carpeting, past the sailboat wallpaper, and I hear the sound of sitcoms coming under the door, and I know Becky's in there. And I open the door, and I look at Becky, and I just brandish, for the second time that night, my blade. And I say to her, I want to let Benji out. And she said, no, look, I'm brandishing a knife. Don't be sorry for me. And she says, Brad, put the knife down. Whoa, I was a guy with a knife. And she says, put the knife down. I said, no, I want to let my dog out. She says, okay. You can let your dog out and then you go to bed. And I was like, deal. So I went down to liberate Benji from his confinement, and I opened the door, and he is so happy to see me, and we hold each other, And like in the way, if you haven't had a dog, like you know that a dog can hold you. And so Benji holds me, and I hold Benji, and he's so bumpy. And then we we go to my bedroom and we go to sleep. And at 3 a.m, I'm awakened by my father, literally pulling me out of the bed by my feet. And I know it's 3 a.m. because my Sharper Image alarm clock says 3 a.m, and I've never been awake at 3 a.m. And my dad's breath smells weird, and his silk scarf is all fucked up. And he drags me out of bed, and he says, "Get in the car!" And I'm terrified. And we get into the Accord, and he just drives. And we're driving, and like, there's no words. He's not saying anything to me, and I'm still in my surgery scrubs. And he drives me to the police station. And the way he parks is like he twists the steering wheel and it screeches, and he's at an angle. And I'm like, what is happening? And he opens a door and he grabs me and he marches me up to the fucking police station, and he bangs on the door of the police station. He is amped up. And he bangs and nobody comes, and he bangs and he bangs and nobody comes, and then he bangs. And then one very annoyed, very sleepy policeman like gives eyes as he walks to the glass door and like opens it up and he says, "What's going on?" And my dad says, "Arrest my son." And the cop says, "Why?" And he says he pulled a knife on his babysitter. And the cop says, "Did he stab her with it?" My dad says, "No." And the cop looks at my dad, and I assume the cop saw more of what my dad's condition was than even I did. And he said, "Sir, take your son home." And he did. We got in the car, and he drove me home. And for years, we did not talk about it. No shit. Did not talk about the dildo. Did not talk about the knife. Did not talk about the poor choice of dinner for me that night. Didn't talk about anything. And as I was thinking about this story, a few months ago, I called my dad, and I was like, "Dad, what happened that night? Like, what happened?" And he said, he immediately started crying. He was like very embarrassed. And so did I. And he said, "You know, sometimes when you're a father, you try to do the best you can, and sometimes you're just trying to be a man. Do you know what I mean?" I said, "Yeah, I do. Thank you."